bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right, good evening, Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Good evening, how are you? Today is Monday, February 6th, 37 days into the new year, just 328 days left, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? It's Monday. It's a brand new week. And what a great week. Man. Coming up straight ahead. Oh yeah, with that tonight we have author and researcher Scott Creighton is here, live from Scotland, here to discuss the Great Pyramid Hoax, his new book, which I've got right here in front of me. Been talking about it a lot over the last month or two on the show. The Great Pyramid Hoax, the conspiracy to conceal the true history of ancient Egypt. The foreword is by Laird Scranton, by the way. Great book. You need to pick it up if you haven't already. You will after tonight's show. It's an amazing book. It's a reference book from here on out. Tomorrow night on the show, yeah, kids, Dave Schrader is here. I cannot wait. Darkness is here tomorrow night. Dave Schrader. Oh, man. I've been so looking forward to this for such a long time. So tomorrow night, Dave Schrader is here. Wednesday night. Now, we moved things around this week. All right. Shuffle the schedule up a little bit. Wednesday night is a special Fader night with John Rappaport. And our special guest will be George Norrie. And we will open up the phone lines and do that. So that will be our Fader night on Wednesday, because Thursday we're going to take off, because Friday we'll be broadcasting live from the Conscious Life Expo. So you still get 4 shows this week, 4 excellent shows. It's going to be a busy week. And then we'll be at the Conscious Life Expo all weekend. All right, so come down and hang out with us. We just posted up in Twitter. I want to remind all of you, and I think I retweeted it. Did I do it already? The live stream for the Conscious Life Expo is up. So if you cannot make it to the Conscious Life Expo, then just get the live stream, and it does feature the entire event, but it will have Fade to Black that Friday night. So you'll be able to watch Fade to Black in stereo, full living 1080p living color Fade to Black on Friday night. Okay, so there you go. We've got an excellent, the most fantastic week lined up in front of us, and then the Conscious Life Expo. So come and hang out with us. Our evening on Friday night, we're going to have David Wilcock, Corey Good, Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, Mike Barra, Whitley Strieber, Daniel Brinkley, Nassim Haramain, Who am I leaving out? Kelly Walden, Kelly Sullivan. Oh, I could just go on and on. So we're going to have 14 guests lined up, and there you go. So that's Friday night. It's going to be a very big evening and a lot of fun. So come and hang out with us, and we'll have lots of stuff to give away. River Moon Coffee is going to be at Conscious Life, and I'm looking forward to that, hanging out with them. So we'll have some coffee to give away. So come and hang out with us. And there you go. The Fadernauts, I look forward to this every single year. Rita and I hanging out with all of you. Holly's coming down. Is Nurse Nancy going to be here for this too, Ree? Nancy's going to be here, right? I've got a friend of mine from Panama, Ricky Royals, coming down from San Francisco. So come and hang out with us at the bar and wear your Fade to Black shirt. And there you go. All right, so let's get the show cracking. I'm very fired up. I'm back in the chair. We had such an amazing weekend over at the house. Just an amazing weekend. We had a couple of friends over for dinner on Saturday night. But other than that, it was all housework all weekend long. Man alive. I had an apron on, a vacuum cleaner in one hand, and a screwdriver in the other, and it was just fun over at the house. The things that you do on a weekend off, and there you go. All right, so let's get this show cracking. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. It's simple enough, at JChurchRadio. Come hang out with us on Twitter. The sandbox is hashtag F2B. Sandbox is already on fire. I see all the Bob Marley stuff, like I was going to forget that. I even saw the Axl Rose pop by. All right, we'll get to all of that in just a minute. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. We'll bust through a couple of thousand tweets tonight. Make a couple of them yours. Come and hang out with us. And hashtag F2B is Fade to Black Questions. F2BQ. Hashtag F2BQ is Fade to Black Questions. Any questions or comments during the show tonight, hit me right there. Everything is in real time. Do subscribe to our podcast. We have over 600 archive shows there. Custom apps, Apple, Android. Just go to the Google store, go to iTunes, all platforms, download what you want. It is free. And then go and subscribe to the podcast, $2 per month. It's that simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the podcast banner. $2 a month, 600 shows. All right. Check out all of our sponsors. That's how this show runs. The banners are over at jimmychurchradio.com. All the promo codes for discounts and free shipping and all those cool things for being a Fade or Not are right there in the banners. Yes. Okay. This weekend we'll be over at the Conscious Life Expo. That's right. February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton. Tickets and information right now are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Click on the banner. And the live stream banner is there too as well. Contact in the Desert. May 19th through the 22nd in Joshua Tree, California. Tickets and info over at jimmychurchradio.com. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Axl Rose is 55. Double nickel, 55. Rick Astley. Is this thing on? Rick Astley today is 51. And I got to say, man, he was all right. Rick Astley was all right. Our dead guys' birthdays today are Bob Marley, 1945 to 1981. Died at the age of 36. Changed the world by the age of 36. With the release of Exodus in 1977, Marley established his worldwide reputation and produced his status as one of the world's best-selling artists of all time, with sales of more than 75 million records. Exodus stayed on the British album charts for 56 consecutive weeks, included songs like Exodus, Waiting in Vain, Jamming, One Love. Then in 1978, he released the album Kaya. And just 3 short years after that, he died of cancer. That's right, on May 11, 1981. So if you stop and think about it, 1977 to 1981, 4 short years, and he changed the world. Happy birthday, Bob Marley. And every hipster in the world ended up going out and buying Legend and thought that they were automatically cool. But you know what? If you got Legend, you almost get a pass card, right? Happy birthday, Bob Marley. All right. OTD, on this day in history, 1998. Falco. Remember Falco? The man behind Rock Me Amadeus and Der Kommissar. And possibly the biggest star to emerge from Austria since Herr Mozart himself, died when his rental car was struck by a bus while he was vacationing in the Dominican Republic. On this day in history, 1998, Falco. Fader fact, the world record in cycling backwards while playing a violin is 60.45 kilometers, and it was done in 5 hours and 8 seconds. All right, don't ask me where I got that, but it was vetted. Tonight, we have author and researcher Scott Creighton here. We're going to discuss one of the most amazing books I've read in a long time, The Great Pyramid Hoax. The thing is about this book, and I'm going to go into this in depth tonight with Creighton. The thing is about this book, when I read something, I don't want fluff. I like, and fluff is fine. Look, I like Clive Cussler. I like fluff. If it's done right. But this book is so direct and to the point and covers the bases at every angle when it comes to Vyse and what happened in 1837, that it's one of those, I read every single word. I studied every single page. And this is a great book. And tonight we're going to discuss that. Tomorrow night, Dave Schrader's here, host of Beyond the Darkness Radio. He'll be here. And then Wednesday, of course, is a special Fader night. We've shifted things around, so we're going to do Fader night on Wednesday. Thursday night, we will be off air, best of replay. And then Friday night is the Conscious Life Expo, the live special broadcast. All right. I don't know if you guys, let me shift gears here. I don't know if you guys were aware of what went up in Berkeley, California, at the University of California, Berkeley. But things got out of control. And the Alliance for Global Justice, which is an organization funded by the Tides Foundation, a George Soros-backed charity, gave $50,000 to help fund a radical left group that used violence to shut down that event up at Berkeley that was supposed to feature Milo Yiannopoulos. Now, whatever you think about Milo is neither here nor there, okay? Yeah, I think he's a cool dude, a strange dude, a weird dude, and one that I think likes the spotlight. Okay, so whatever. It's not about Milo. But it's about what happened up there with masked activists, masked in black, joining the already large group of peaceful protesters that had gathered in the area between Sathergate and the north end of Telegraph Avenue. And campus police were holding their positions. It was peaceful. Everything was cool. At the entrance of Martin Luther King Jr. Student Union building that was hosting the event. Everything was cool. Everything is good. And as the gathered crowd got more agitated, these masked black bloc activists began hurtling projectiles, including bricks, lit fireworks, throwing rocks at the building and police. And it was just a peaceful protest. All right, Milo. They didn't want Milo there. Okay, all right. Everybody's got the right to speak, right? To gather, to protest. But doing this inflated everything and got out of control. Some used police barriers as battering rams to attack the doors of the venue, which was uncool, breaching at least one of the doors and entering the venue on the first floor. But what feels strange to me is that it turned into a book-burning, hate-filled riot. It was violent. someone was shot. And so what feels strange is that George Soros directly funded this uprising. Right? And he doesn't even live in the United States. And he's got these funds going on all around the world, hidden money running here and there. And this thing kicked off, and it just didn't need to be that way. Not on a college campus, and not this whole thing about trying to prevent darkness. Right? That's this image that they're doing. Right? And then there's book burning. What do you do? What does that have to do on a college campus, especially about this event? Right? It was a total instigation. And the conspiracy here is that Soros is funding this thing. And I just feel uncomfortable with it. So I just wanted to state that as I look into this a bit more and different events around the country that could possibly, there's $2.2 million that have come in from Soros into this organization. It's just not right. And these masked, blacked crusaders coming in from out of town to start throwing bricks at the police. It's not right. It's not right. So anyway, I wanted to share this with you as well. Check this out. One of the creepiest stories that I can comment on and share with you. And it has an ending. Stefano Brizzi, who was imprisoned for murdering a police officer and dissolving his body in acid, has been found dead in jail. A prison spokesperson confirmed that Brizzi, 50, died yesterday at HMP Belmarsh in southeast London. The police added, and I'm quoting here, as with all death... Sorry about that. Okay, serious face is back on. The police added, and I'm quoting, as with all deaths in custody, there will be an independent investigation. End quote. Yeah, right. Police believe that Brizzi, now this is about as dark of a story as I can relate to you, but just wrap your mind around this. They believe that Brizzi had attempted to cook and eat this police officer, his name was Mr. Semple, Mr. Semple's body after strangling him. Now, how these two got together, that's a whole nother situation, but it doesn't affect this story. Investigators found a leg on a roasting tin in the oven and found traces of Mr. Semple's DNA on grease in a cooker, in a blender, and on a set of chopsticks. Are you listening? Detectives also discovered pieces of his flesh floating in chemicals in the bath, in his bathroom, and a forensic dentist found that a bite mark on a discarded rib in the kitchen matched Brizzi's lower teeth. Oh, man. During his trial at the Old Bailey, the court heard that Brizzi was a fan of the Breaking Bad TV series and had been inspired by an episode of the show to dissolve Semple's body in acid. He was arrested when police discovered the gruesome scene after being called to his apartment to investigate a foul stench. You think? But it reminds you of Dahmer, right? Seriously, no investigation needed here, folks. All right? I've solved everything. You kill and eat a cop. You get caught. You get convicted. You go to prison. You will be found dead. That's it. That's it. There's no investigation. Nobody's going to find out how he died or who did it or anything like that. There's no whodunit here. That's it. That's the end of the story. But it's one of the craziest. And when you read the details of all of this, it's disturbed reading, but it had the correct ending. So there you go. And here you have something else. I know, right? I'm watching Twitter here, dazed. I know. That's good. But it's real. And, we have a very, very, very large audience over in the UK. And they're hearing me relay this to everyone. And they know that I've toned it down. I've toned it way, way, way down. There could be kids listening to this show, but I just dig the ending and the comments from the police department. It's right here. Hold on. Where is it? Right here. All right. As with all deaths in custody, there will be an independent investigation. There you go. That's from the police. All right. And here we have conveniently timed for 2 weeks after the inauguration. I'm going to share this for your listening pleasure. Vandenberg Air Force Base is set to launch an unarmed Minuteman III missile, right? An operational test launch of an Air Force Global Strike Command unarmed Minuteman III missile is scheduled to take place right here in Southern California from Vandenberg Air Force Base between 11:03 p.m. tomorrow night, Tuesday, and 5:03 a.m. Wednesday. Now, here in Southern California, we look forward to these missile launches, and it happens right here in Los Angeles, right here on the coast. They are dramatic, and they are cool. They will scare the crap out of you if you don't know that it's about to happen. The first time back in the early 80s that I witnessed a missile launch out of Vandenberg, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was World War III. I mean, that's the first thing seriously, I was walking down the steps of this apartment building over in Alhambra, and I see this missile taking off out of the trees. And it was at dusk, so it was just starting to get dark. Sun was setting. And I'm watching this massive rocket just fire straight off into space. And the vapor trail that it left hung there for what seemed like probably 30 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating. It stayed up there forever, glowing in these weird colors, bouncing off the sunlight from the setting sun. And when something like that happens, and I didn't know what was going on, I flipped out. And I just thought, man, I got to get home. I got to pack my bag. I got to drive my car to the mountains. The Russian missiles are going to be coming this way any second. I didn't know till I jumped on TV. I was with a few other people too, and saw that it was just this Minuteman launch. Well, anyway, back to this. The operational test launch is going to happen. It's going to happen tomorrow night. The purpose of launching the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM, is to validate and verify the effectiveness, readiness, and accuracy of the weapon systems, and this is according to the Air Force Global Strike Command. Team Vandenberg, and I'm quoting here from the press release, is poised to provide safe launch operations in support of the Air Force Global Strike Command support and demonstration of our nation's secure and effective combat-ready ICBM force. The last test launch of an unarmed Minuteman III from Vandenberg occurred on September 5th, 2016. I reported about it on this show. It's strategically timed. 2 weeks after Trump takes office, let's show the world what we got. Let's flex our muscles. But that's exactly what this is. Make no mistake about it. And it's going to happen tomorrow night right here in Los Angeles. So this is my public service announcement. When you see this thing take off tomorrow night, you'll know it's just a test, and it is unarmed. All right. And if you're going to be out there, videotape it for me, will you? Send it in. Also, before I wrap up here, another public service announcement. Tragedy hit home for us here in Los Angeles over the weekend because the Anaheim White House restaurant, a landmark here in Southern California, caught fire this past Saturday morning. Anaheim Fire and Rescue officials received a call of a commercial structure fire in the 800 block of South Anaheim Boulevard around 4:18 a.m. Approximately 40 firefighters from Anaheim, Orange County Fire Department, Garden Grove Fire Department, and Fullerton Fire worked on extinguishing the heavy flames. It went up in smoke from the building's roof, by the way. The aggressive fire was knocked down in about 30 minutes, but fire crews continued working on hot spots throughout the three-story restaurant for nearly 3 hours. Sir Bruno Serrato, the owner of the Anaheim White House restaurant, and this is a gourmet establishment, by the way. I mean, a top-shelf restaurant. But he used the restaurant's kitchen to feed 2,000 underprivileged Southern California children every single day. And this is an institution here in Southern California. And everybody, every year, the fundraising and the things that go on at the White House so they can feed 2,000 kids every single day. Bruno Serrato is somebody that is so admired here in Southern California. And to have this happen and to hear him speaking about this so passionately in the tears, because he didn't care about the restaurant. He cared about the kids, cared about his restaurant staff and the people that were out of work. And, it's going to take years to rebuild. This restaurant was big. Serrato is an Italian immigrant who came to the U.S. with $50 in his pocket and worked his butt off to open this restaurant 30 years ago. I've eaten there many, many times over the years. And this is a total bummer to all of us here in Southern California. So I'm just going to say this to our audience. There's a GoFundMe page set up for donations. And we're going to put this up right now in Twitter. It's GoFundMe.com/Anaheim White House. That's all you got to do. Go click on it. The goal is $750,000 to rebuild the restaurant right before showtime tonight. It was getting close to $100,000, and that's pretty good in 24 hours. Everybody here in Southern California knows what the White House restaurant means to the children of our community and our community in general. And it was just a sad day here in Southern California. All right, so with that, let's get out of here because I want to get Scott Creighton in here tonight. It is The Great Pyramid Hoax. I've been talking about this book for a couple of months. Tonight, Scott Creighton is here live from Scotland. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I'll be right back with Scott Creighton. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. In a world of GMO, genetically modified organisms, that is, chemicals, processed foods, and a healthcare system that's unraveling like a cheap suit, it's time to prepare. God created herbs, and herbs help man. Our body can heal itself, just sometimes we need assistance. You need some help? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our mild detox is quite powerful with its unique blend of 8 different herbs. And if you're looking for more, our non-GMO supplements will help you with different needs you might have. Health should be a top priority. Take care of your health naturally. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Give your body a treat. Let the herbs do their thing naturally. Read all the testimonies on the website, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Sickness and viruses are like intruders, and herbs are like warriors. Let the tea work for you. That's GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Klutsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fade or Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Very excited about tonight's guest, Scott Creighton. I've been talking about this book now for a couple of months. When I first received it, I could not believe my eyes. I was like, this is the book that needs to be written and read. It's called The Great Pyramid Hoax, The Conspiracy to Conceal the True History of Ancient Egypt. Scott Creighton is an engineer whose extensive travels have allowed him to explore many of the world's ancient sacred sites. The host of the Alternative Egyptology Forum on AboveTopSecret.com. He lives in Glasgow, Scotland. Tonight, Scott Creighton will reveal how the only hard evidence that dates the Great Pyramid, the quarry marks discovered by Colonel Vyse in 1837, was forged. Creighton's study strikes down one of the most fundamental assertions of orthodox Egyptologists and reopens the long-standing questions about the Great Pyramid's true age, who really built it, and why. You can get the book right now at Inner Traditions, and just click on author Scott Creighton. And I would like to welcome to Fade to Black, live from Glasgow, Scott Creighton. Scott, good evening. Good morning.
Good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Yeah, go ahead and freak me out right now and tell me what time it is over there.
It's about 25 to 4 a.m. So I'm sitting here with a big mug of coffee just to try and keep me upright.
Yeah, I know you are, and thank you so much. What was I'll just tell everybody right now, Scott hit us back last week. He's like, man, I love doing shows so early in the morning for you Americans. But I'll be ready to go. So just thank you for that. And our audience has been listening to me both over at Coast to Coast and here on Fade to Black for the last couple of months, talking about this book and the importance of it. And so it's a treat for me because this audience and I and my wife Rita too, we study Egypt on this show. We study everything, but Egypt is front and center on this show. So we're going to go through this book tonight, complete, and I encourage everybody to go and get their own copy. I consider it a reference book, okay? I really do, Scott, and I think that as time goes by, people are going to refer back to you and this book for a long time to come. And so congratulations on that. All right? And I truly mean that. But now, all the bro love is over. Let's get serious. You're a first-time guest on this show, so you get the first-time guest disclaimer, okay?
Okay.
And that disclaimer is this. This is just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where the conversation goes, it goes. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Are you ready?
Let's go for this.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. Tell me really quick, for you to, and all of your books, by the way, in your research, you've chosen this path in life. I want to go back to your childhood. Were your parents crazy? Were they part of your outlook on life that has caused you to go and try to discover things?
Probably not, Jimmy. To be honest, my parents, I think I was a bit of a trial, really, to my parents. I totally came, most of the time, from my parents from total left field, asking them all sorts of questions that they just didn't know the answers to because, well, for them, they're brought up with their own education, via the conventional educational system. Which has very traditional views, and a lot of these views, when you're a kid, you're constantly asking questions, but why, but why, but why? You keep asking why, and eventually, they ran out of answers, and I was just a very, very inquisitive child. The pyramids of Egypt held a particular fascination. I mean, look at these things, Jimmy. They're just huge, absolutely huge. And you're thinking to yourself as a kid, how could this be the tomb for one guy, just one guy? Look at the site. These things, kids are fascinated by dinosaurs, right? These massive, ferocious animals. The pyramids for me, well, they're much bigger than dinosaurs. So, I was just hooked on Egypt as a kid. And, I was constantly asking my parents about them. And, they would go and get me books and stuff. They would encourage it. But I wouldn't say they had a particular interest themselves, but they were certainly encouraging, certainly not discouraging. So obviously my interest grew from there as a kid. But, as you get older, you realise that what you've been taught at school, that these structures were the tombs of the pharaohs.
Right.
You realise the conventional story, the conventional narrative has so many holes in that narrative. It just eventually just doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense. And for me, well, that just wasn't good enough. I had to find answers that satisfied me.
What I wanted to ask you is, with Edinburgh being right there, and the megalithic structures, in Ireland, and of course Stonehenge. Did you go out and explore those structures as a kid?
Yeah, I've been to most of these places, the Callanish stones as well, up in the far north of Scotland. Obviously Stonehenge as well. Yeah, so I've been Roslin Chapel. That's just along the road, more or less. So I've been to all of these fascinating historical sites. Yeah.
Have you been up to Skara Brae?
I've not been to Skara Brae. It's obviously a place I would dearly love to go, and it's definitely on my bucket list.
Right.
Laird Scranton, who wrote the introduction to the Great Pyramid Hoax, he's just written a new book about Skara Brae, coincidentally.
I've got it right here. He was just on the show talking about it, and we love Laird. And his introduction to the book, by the way, was most excellent. And let's actually jump into the book. I want to say this, and I'm going to start kind of at the end, and then we'll go back to the beginning and work our way forward. But the conclusions of what is going on here is a game changer. Okay, we know that Sitchin first proposed this, and we'll talk about that too as well. He had to back off on that, and I like the way that you present that section in the book and why, with Graham Hancock and so forth. And I understand that, and I think that we all did. But we know that the Great Pyramid is not what orthodox Egyptologists or academia presents it today, we know that it's not that. Now, this book is such a game changer that it will force people in the Orthodox realms, to rewrite history. Do you think that they're actually going to do that? Do you think Wikipedia is going to get updated? All of these textbooks.
Well, the problem there, Jimmy, is that you've got the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are all from the present establishment, and they're all currently more or less still in place. You find that this is especially so, you find on Wikipedia. It's incredible, that you go on there and you make a suggestion for a modification, and there are people on there that just fight, and they're really ferocious about protecting, what it is, the current paradigm. They're just absolute, really, determined that nothing should be changed. So I think personally, this book, I think in time, it probably will make a difference, but it's not going to happen overnight. I'm realistic about that. We basically need to wait for the old guard to kind of basically move on, and younger people today who are reading, other views, reading my books, the books of Graham, Robert Bauval, Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, and so forth and so on. Look at these guys' ideas, assess them obviously, and see where they fit in, and hopefully they'll take some of the ideas from these books and try and break the doors down, because this is what it's about. I call it these marks essentially are what I call a convenient untruth. That's what they represent. They're there as a barrier to prevent progress. And if you remove that barrier, then, we open the door to other possibilities. And you find that the establishment, the academia, they basically think they've got it covered, that they know most of the answers, not all the answers, but probably most of the answers. And the simple fact is, this book shows they're wrong. They're wrong about this particular case, this particular situation, and it needs to be addressed. Now, I don't know if they ever will. I think hopefully in the future at some time it will, but as I said, Jimmy, I'm a realist. It's not going to happen overnight. But as Graham Hancock tweeted the other day, he said Egyptologists need to take this book seriously.
Yeah, they have to. And one of the points that I have driven home, and I will continue, Scott, you don't think it's going to happen overnight? I'll make sure that it does. Okay, I'll make it my mission. But I'm going to say this. The gang graffiti and the Khufu cartouche were put there because of ego, right? They weren't put there. They were put there for Vyse's ego. He had to get, his name in the books, and that was his goal. What I don't think that he realized then by making it his ego and doing this was that everything in Egyptology was going to hinge on that cartouche and on those gang signs, because there's nothing else that says Khufu anywhere. Or in any pyramid for that matter, but that certainly includes the Great Pyramid. It was done because of ego, and that ego has forced all of history to be written in a certain way, and that dogma is because of ego. Am I wrong in saying it like that?
I think you're perfectly correct in saying it like that, Jimmy. That's one of the motives that I give in the book as to why Vyse actually perpetrated this hoax. Was he basically, if you read his published account, he says over and over again that he wanted to make an important discovery. It was almost becoming an obsession for him to discover something important. And he says specifically in his book that he wanted to discover the cartouche of a king. Now, just for your listeners who maybe don't know what a cartouche is, a cartouche is essentially It's shaped like a kind of bullet. That it comes from the French word cartridge, which is the name for a casing of a bullet shell. And inside this shape, this cartridge shape, there are hieroglyphics, and that always represents the name of a king. So the cartouche is always the name of the king. And this king's name is supposedly found inside the Great Pyramid by Colonel Vyse in 1837. But as I said, Vyse in his published account stated over and over that he wanted to find something important, and specifically the cartouche of a king that would allow him and academics to date the pyramid. Now, I suspect Vyse, as you say, Jimmy, probably wanted to do this for notoriety, to get his name in the history books, because he was a wealthy man. He did not need the money. He was a very, very wealthy man in his own right. He came from he was very close to the British aristocracy, the ruling elite of the day, so he didn't need the money. The other possible motive is he spent an awful lot of money. He spent something like £10,000 during his excavations and his operations at Giza, which in 1837, that works out to be something like $1.3 million.
Right.
Jimmy. Now that's a lot of money, and it has to be said it's a lot of incentive as well to make sure you find something. You come out of these operations, with something. And of course, as well, you have issues. It was very competitive as well at that time. You had French explorers, German, Italian explorers, and they're all kind of competing with each other. And Vyse was finding nothing of great importance. He found some artefacts which he would send back to the British Museum, but he wasn't finding the important thing. He wanted to find the mummy of the king or a cartouche. That's the two things he really wanted to find, and he was finding neither of them until eventually, of course, he did find this cartouche. But there's all sorts of motives which I go into in the book, as you obviously know.
Yeah. We'll get to that right after the break, and we're going to head to a break here in a few minutes. I want to clarify something too as well. This wasn't the only hoax that he did on the Giza plateau. We have what happened over in Menkaure and that pyramid too as well. Can you share with us what he did in that chamber on the inside of that pyramid?
Well, in the pyramid of Menkaure, that's the third of the giant, the smallest of the three big pyramids at Giza. His team apparently discovered a coffin and some mummy wrappings as well in this coffin inside the burial chamber. Now, there had been other people that had explored this chamber before Vyse arrived, had explored this pyramid before Vyse arrived. But for some reason, all those other explorers totally missed discovering this coffin lid. And this coffin lid had the name Menkaure written in it in hieroglyphics, obviously. And they found some mummy wrappings as well, and some bones as well, some human bones. But it turns out that the coffin lid was from a much, much later dynasty, the 26th dynasty, I believe, which is 22 dynasties after this pyramid was actually built. And the bones were radiocarbon dated to the early Christian era, about 300 AD. So you've got bones from one time and a coffin lid from another time, none of which was contemporary with the supposed construction of this particular pyramid. So it just begs the question, how on earth did that happen when no one else had ever discovered these things in previous excavations of that pyramid?
So he was just walking around Giza, right? Right? Just trying to find something to get his name tied to, because everybody was discovering things. Back in 1837, what a great time to be in Egypt, right? Everything was new and fresh and discovering things. And he was doing everything that he could to make his mark there. And when it comes to the Menkaure pyramid, that right there, why wouldn't historians say, look, he did this with that pyramid, and now he's doing this over here at the Great Pyramid. There's something fishy going on. Let's look into this guy, but nobody has. I don't understand.
The Menkora episode is very much one of these situations, Jimmy, that was, let's just say, brushed under the carpet and no longer spoken about. You know, once carbon dating technology arrived back in the 50s and 60s, they realised that they had a problem with these particular artifacts. They knew that the mummy board, the coffin lid that was found, was from a much later time, but the bones, well, they weren't sure about the bones. Maybe they felt that there was maybe a reburial using a later coffin for the body, but it turns out the bones weren't contemporary with the structure either once these were carbon dated. You know, so it's just been quietly ignored and brushed under the carpet. And, you know, this is the thing, Jimmy. This subject has not been spoken about properly since Colonel Vyse discovered these marks. This book, apart from the early work by Zechariah, this book is the first book which has made a serious attempt at really analysing and scrutinising in meticulous detail these marks that were allegedly found in these chambers. This is the first time it's ever been done. And my goodness, you know, there's so many questions that this research that I've put in this book raises.
How do you, we've got 60 seconds, so you can answer this really quick. How do you feel now? You must feel great to get this book out there and have it be so comprehensive. There's no details left. You've laid out the perfect case. I believe it's a hoax. That's it. There's no question in my mind. How do you feel right now?
Well, it's good to get the book out there, Jimmy, but, you know, when I was compiling and researching the book, I felt myself becoming angrier and angrier because I felt as if we've been cheated. We've been cheated out of our history by this hoax for the best part of 200 years. And that annoys me, and it still annoys me to this day.
Let's take a break right here, Scott. Awesome start to the show. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton. We're talking about his book, The Great Pyramid Hoax, The Conspiracy to Conceal the True History of Ancient Egypt. It is a game changer. This is Fade to Black. More with Scott right after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oh, fall. My favorite time of year. Cooler temperatures and, well, let's be honest, layers. Lots and lots of layers. Look, I get it. We all have that favorite hoodie. Matter of fact, I've got a few favorite hoodies. You should wear yours. Enjoy it. I do. But I stay focused on my health year-round. And for me, I take Nature's Youth RSF from nature'syouth.com. Nature's Youth RSF from nature'syouth.com. I eat right, control my portion sizes, still maintain a commitment to regular fitness, and I get plenty of rest, and I take Nature's Youth RSF. It's okay to cover up your beach body for a few months, but don't just forget about it. Nature's Youth understands exactly what it means to provide top-quality health products, and Nature's Youth customers not only improve their health, they know they're also providing their body with the right nourishment to maintain peak performance levels and fight the aging process. So layer up and get started today with Nature's Youth RSF. nature'syouth.com. Simple to use, even simpler to order. Go to nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
right, welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton, talking about his book, The Great Pyramid Hoax. This portion of Fade to Black is brought to you by Life Change Tea. Just go right now, click on the banners at jimmychurchradio.com. Forget the tea.com. Just mention Jimmy when you order, either over the phone or online. And because you know somebody, you're going to get yourself some free shipping. All right, let's get back to Scott. Oh, I was just listening to the commercial there, and I heard Reese Ifans do his little thing. I just saw the movie Snowden with Rita, and Reese Ifans, I'm like, who is his teacher here at the CIA? Turns out it was Reese Ifans. I was like, man, that's Reese. And Reese is all grown up and turned into a real actor. He's always been great. But anyway, I just heard Reese's little thing. I had to go there. Let's get back to Vyse. And what I would like to do, because it's such an intriguing story, Scott, that I kind of want to paint the picture here for the audience as to what was going on. So let's go back to 1837 and the King's Chamber and what Vyse was doing and the chambers that are above, because I talk about it all the time, but unless you know the layout of the Great Pyramid, you may or may not know what I am talking about as I describe this. So let's go back and to the King's Chamber in 1837. What was Vyse doing, and what are these chambers that are above the King's Chamber?
Okay, Jimmy, these small chambers above the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is the main chamber within the Great Pyramid where the so-called sarcophagus is situated. Now, above this chamber, there are 5 what are called relieving chambers, and they're roughly the same dimensions as the King's Chamber. They're about 25, 30 feet long by about 15 feet wide, something like that. But they're only each of these chambers are only about 3 feet high with a flat ceiling, only about 3 feet high. So you have to crouch inside these chambers. The topmost chamber is the only one of the 5 that you can stand up. That's got a gabled roof. So each of these chambers, the very first one above the King's Chamber is called Davison's Chamber, and interestingly, that particular chamber was discovered, I think it was about 70 years prior to Vyse actually going to Egypt, by a chap called Nathaniel Davison. So that one had already been discovered. Vyse discovered the chambers above Davison's Chamber, which he named as Wellington's Chamber, Nelson's Chamber, Lady Arbuthnot's Chamber, and Campbell's Chamber. These are all, obviously, the first 2 are the sort of heroes of the British Napoleonic Wars, and the other 2 are, people that Vyse knew at his time in Egypt.
And interestingly here, let me jump in really quick. Davidson's Chamber, now these are like 5 attics, everybody. That's what it is, like 5 spaces above the King's Chamber. Davidson's Chamber, strangely enough, it did not have any gang graffiti or marks in it, did it?
Not one has ever been found inside Davison's Chamber, and as you rightly point out, Jimmy, that's a very curious anomaly because if these quarry gangs were placing, so what they would do is they would cut these stones apparently at the quarries, and once the stone was cut, each gang or crew that cut these stones, they would place their mark on their work, kind of like a stamp, if you like. This is our work, So they would put their crew name on each of these blocks as they were cut at the quarries before they're shipped to the pyramid. Now, if they are doing that, and this is the orthodox explanation as to why we find these marks, these ochre painted marks inside these chambers, is because this is what the quarry gangs did. But the curious thing is, if they were doing that as a matter of course, as a practice to place, a regular practice of placing their name on their work, why aren't there any blocks in Davidson's chamber with any of these quarry gang names on those blocks. The only ones we find are in those chambers that were blasted open by Colonel Vyse.
Yeah, it's so obvious. The reason why there isn't any Khufu cartouches or gang graffiti in Davidson's chamber is because somebody was already there, right? And nothing was documented because there wasn't anything there. So Vyse, therefore, couldn't hoax anything in Davidson's chamber. He could only do it in the chambers that he blasted his way into, and he was the first person to see on the inside of those chambers.
That's exactly correct, Jimmy. You can't basically put something in a chamber where there's been so many other people in that chamber that know there was nothing there. So you can't then come along subsequently put a cartouche in that chamber because everybody will go, that wasn't there last week.
Right. And the quarrymen, if you will, just happened to not put their gang symbols only on the first floor. They forgot. Or it's just outrageous. I don't know how Vyse thought that he could pull this off, but he certainly did, and they bought into his narrative, no doubt. Now, this is what I want to relay to everybody. This is another point, and then I want to move on. The rocks or the granite, these blocks, were brought in from hundreds of miles away. And this is red ochre paint. This wasn't engraved. This wasn't carved. This was paint. And none of it was damaged as it was dragged across the desert for probably years, right?
Well, there's a couple of issues there, Jimmy. You actually touched on another curious aspect of this whole thing. There are two types of blocks that make up these chambers. There are granite blocks and there are limestone blocks. Now, the granite blocks mainly make up the flooring and the roofing of these chambers. The underside, obviously, of the granite block is the ceiling of the chamber below, and above it is the floor of the chamber above.
Right.
The walls are mainly limestone blocks. But the curious thing is that you find that the granite blocks on the floor and the roof, the granite blocks, there's no quarry marks whatsoever. It's like the guys that did the granite, cut the granite blocks, which is much harder and a lot more physical hard job to do, obviously didn't take any pride in their work and put their gang name on the granite blocks. The limestone blocks, which were cut from
on
the
site,
Chura, they're much easier, and yet we find, there's gang names on the limestone blocks, but not the granite blocks. Really curious situation.
Yeah, and moving these blocks into position, both the granite blocks and the limestone blocks, this is a labor-intensive job. No matter how it was done, whether it was done by ET or it was done by humans, it doesn't matter. These are huge, heavy blocks, and none of the graffiti got damaged.
Yeah, these blocks weigh somewhere in the order of between 40 and 70 ton. Okay, this is what we're talking about. They're not easy to move about. But one of the things that the ancient Egyptians would do, Jimmy, to help reduce the friction in moving these blocks is they would lay down some liquid gypsum, a very thin mortar, liquid mortar gypsum, a slurry basically, and they would use that to slide the blocks because this slurry would reduce the friction of the blocks. And in these chambers, you can actually see some of it in some of the photographs of the chambers. You can see it running down the sides of the walls.
Right.
It oozes out the side and runs down the walls of the chamber. But the remarkable thing is, in Campbell's chamber, where you can see the underside of these blocks, where they would have used the slurry to slide it into place. If there was slurry used, how come we can see, this plaster slurry, how come we can see the quarry marks? How come we can see the cartouche perfectly? Why isn't it smeared with slurry?
Right, or dripped on.
And dripped on, yeah.
And there's another curious point here, is that all of the, bar none, all of these marks, all of the painting that was done is done either in plain view on an open spot and is not dripped on, it's not scratched, and it's not half a mark like it was hidden behind another granite block. You know, none of that. Everything is out in the open because, why? Because they were going in there just painting willy-nilly, right? They were just finding an open spot where they could get the whole symbol in there, and that's what they would do. Nobody questioned this. I don't get it. If I'm a detective, it doesn't take much to figure this out, but they chose to ignore it.
Yeah, this is what I think I said at the top of the show. This is a convenient untruth. I actually genuinely believe, Jimmy, that the powers that be in Egypt know that these marks are fake. I've been emailed personally by Egyptologists to say, yeah, you're right, we know they're fake. I can't give the names for that because it's more than their job's worth. But the marks are fake. You know, this slurry, none of them, you know, there's slurry dripping down all these walls. How come none of these painted marks have any slurry going over the top of them? If these blocks had these marks painted at the quarry and then slid into place, you would have the slurry going over the tops of these quarry marks. But none of them, we find none of them with any slurry going over the tops of these marks. It's like the forgers deliberately made sure that they avoided areas where there was slurry because they couldn't place these marks over the slurry, because that would then show that the marks were painted in situ and not at the quarries. And what you have to then ask, because some of these marks are upside down to make it look convincing, to make it look as though the mark was painted at the quarry. Yeah, and it only ended up upside down with the builders turning the block to find the best way to fit that block into place. So how come, you know, these marks just magically managed to avoid all these runs of slurry? You would think if these marks had been placed on these blocks at the quarry and then put into place using this slurry, you know, that's reduced the friction to move these blocks running down this wall, you would think at least some of these marks would have some of this slurry going over the top of these marks. But the forgers made sure, they were very careful to make sure that they did not place any cartouche or sign on top of this slurry, because if it's on top of the slurry, it means it's been done in situ.
Yeah,
and then
game
you have
over.
to ask yourself, why is a cartouche upside down in situ?
Right. Game over there, for sure. But if there was a half a cartouche, right, that was hidden behind a seam, right, you know, some 50-ton block, well, then we know it was done at that time, and we could move on from this. But there isn't an example of that. Everything is out in plain view, which for Sitchin. Okay, there's 2 points I need to cover before we head out of the break. One of them you just brought up, that Zahi Hawass or Cairo in general, the Antiquities Department, they don't want this investigated. There's reasons why nobody's gone up there and done any or photographed or done anything, because they don't want this blown out. I want to address that. The second thing is, Sitchin knew. His senses were telling him something is not right here. He was onto something, but what he didn't have was Vyse's personal journals, and he didn't have access to that. But that's what you did. You got on the scent of the trail, and you went off after Vyse's personal journals. Tell me how you found them and how you were able to head out with your wife and get this part of it done, because it's an amazing story.
Okay, it stood to reason that because Vyse's published account of his time in Egypt, his published account is over 3 volumes, Jimmy, 3 hefty books, and they're written in a diary form. So that tells you right away that he obviously was working from, his field notes, a diary, a journal. So there had to be, a journal. And, I'd been looking I have to say, probably half-heartedly, over a number of years for this particular journal, and always came up with a blank end, a dead end. And then one day I just happened to just type in, our friend Google, and up popped this reference to the Vyse manuscripts in some obscure little archive centre to the north of London. And I thought, wow, have to go there, have to see this document. And, I had reasons why I needed to see this document. And it goes back to some of the earlier work done by Sitchin, because Zechariah didn't have access to this document, but he was presenting some evidence that could be verified by this document if I could see it. And I did manage to track it down. I did manage to see it, all 600 pages of it, in an incredibly badly written, I have to say, difficult to read handwriting. And my goodness, I found a lot more than I was bargaining for.
The ability to photograph these in high res, did you expect that to be allowed? You must have been elated for them to, go ahead, photograph it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was it's just for the archive centre. It's just another document, and people come into these archive centres photographing, birth certificates, marriage certificates, all sorts of not ancient documents, but old documents from early Victorian times, and as long as you didn't use flash photography, they were perfectly happy about it. They would even photocopy things for you if you wanted, So I was pleasantly surprised at that, and it certainly made a difference to the research being able to copy or to photograph these documents, because you can zoom in, you can do stuff with the photograph that you simply can't do with a photocopy of the document.
Now, the ability to read his handwriting, did you get better and better at that? Because I tried to read it too, and I could see the frustration there. But were you able to just acclimate yourself to that and start to read it in real time?
I can read it now fairly well,
right.
But at the beginning, Jimmy, it was an absolute nightmare. As you say yourself, some of the handwriting is published in the book, and it is execrable. It's just so difficult to read. But what helped, obviously, was that this was his journal, his private journal, which he based to write, was the basis for which to write his published book. So I was able to go to the date in his journal and the date in his book and to try and cross-reference, and I could pick out words. All right, yeah, that's that word there, block, granite, and I could see how he would write the word granite and how he would write the word block, and I just worked basically from that premise. It was slow, it took a lot of time, but it was worth it in the end, because I can now read his handwriting reasonably well. Some pages are still quite difficult, but overall I managed to, put it this way, Jimmy, I managed to get some real important stuff out of that journal, which is not in his published account for very obvious reasons.
Do you think Raven and Hill, his two partners in crime, if you will, going back to Menkaure and that pyramid, do you think Raven and Hill also were part of that hoax?
Part of the
at Menkaure,
the Menkaure hoax.
Yes.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I think Vyse, Hill, and Raven, that was the team. The three of them were involved, I think, in just about everything at Giza, and there's obviously other evidence that implicates Raven and Hill, and obviously Vyse himself in all of this.
Now, as you're doing your investigation and you're looking in Vyse's journal, one of the things that you point out in this book, which is meticulous on your part, I mean, it's so well laid out, is Vyse trying to figure out how to do Khufu's cartouche. And because we have to go back to 1837, there were only a couple of experts in the world, and that was back in London. He's in Cairo, that could lay out any of this, right? And he needed to figure, because if he's going to hoax this, he's got to have Khufu's cartouche correct. And he, in his published journals, it was all simple. But in his private journals, he's trying to work this out himself. And as you were laying eyes on this, were you just like, holy crap, man, this guy is just full of doo-doo, because here he is trying to figure out how to do this correctly.
Yeah, you see this in Vyse's journal. This is one of the things that was really quite ironic, Jimmy, in actually discovering Vyse's private journal and reading those pages. At the beginning, I could barely read a single word on the page, but the one thing I could make out and could read very easily were the hieroglyphics that Vyse had drawn on these pages. And there was the Khufu cartouche in a number of these pages. And you could see that he discovered a cartouche initially with a circle. As one of the signs in the cartouche of Khufu is a circle, and initially you see him drawing it in his diary with no lines in the circle. There's normally three horizontal lines, stacked lines in this circle, and initially in Vyse's private journal there are no lines in this circle. And you have to ask yourself the question, well, why, if he's copying this from something that is already there, why is he missing out these lines in this circle? And that is a key question in the book, because under one of the other signs in the Khufu cartouche name is a small snake. And under the snake, there's two tiny dots. You can see these dots in the cartouche in the chamber today. And Vyse drew those two tiny dots. They're much smaller than these three lines. He misses out the three lines, but draws these two tiny dots. Why? Why would he draw something so small and miss out something so large? And, if he is meticulously copying, and says this in his book, his published account, he meticulously, examined the chamber and copied the marks. So why did he miss out? On two occasions in his private journal, he missed out these lines in this circle. And obviously I explain the reason why in the book. And then eventually he finds another Khufu cartouche, or rather Mr. Perring, another one of his assistants, tells him of a cartouche in a tomb to the west of the Great Pyramid that's got the Khufu cartouche. And he finds that this cartouche has got lines inside the circle. And you can see Vyse going back to his journal and making that correction.
Yeah, and also, I don't want to get too technical here, but most cartouches are vertical. He's trying to figure out a horizontal cartouche, too. And all criminals, all hoaxes, right, you're going to get caught and you're going to make mistakes. And that was his downfall. Well, aside from admitting to it later, and we'll get to that. But I want to talk here. We have to talk about Hill's facsimiles. They didn't have cameras back then. So what they had to do with anything in discovery back then, you had an artist with you. You had somebody with you that would document everything exactly as you saw it, and they were shipping this stuff back to London to get confirmation on it. His guy was his partner in crime, Hill, who was going in and making drawings, allegedly, of exactly what they were finding there. What evidence of forgery did this offer to you?
Well, there's a couple of things here, Jimmy. Go to the first chamber that Vyse broke into, or blasted his way into, Wellington's chamber. This is the one directly above Davison's chamber. Now, inside that chamber, when Vyse blasted into it, he finds nothing, okay? And then he goes up on a second visit. I think this was on the 27th of March, 1837. He's with, I think it's Hill and Mash, two other guys, were in this chamber, and then he finds some painted marks, like the strange symbols, strange geometric symbols painted onto the wall near to the entrance that they broke through. But Vyse writes, and he found these strange marks, these geometric symbols, but then he writes, but nothing like hieroglyphics. Now, hieroglyphics to Vyse are these quarry marks, which he would have been familiar with, which he would have seen elsewhere. So hieroglyphics and quarry marks are synonymous with Vyse, okay? So when Vyse writes, in Wellington's chamber, he found nothing like hieroglyphics. Okay, remember, he's looking for a cartouche. This is what he's desperate to find. And he says there's nothing there, okay? In his published book, Jimmy, on this very same night, in the very same chamber, Wellington's chamber, on the same night, he writes in his published account, we found the quarry marks. So there you have right away a major contradiction from his private thoughts in his private journal to his public account in his published book. Major contradiction. And when you go and look and find out, well, what quarry marks did he find in Wellington's chamber, where he originally says in his private journal there were no marks? You find it was a cartouche, and it was painted by Mr. Hill. So that's your first clue there that, you know, this just doesn't smell right at all. There's something going on here. But there's another issue with the major issue with the drawings made by Hill, and it's to do with Mr. Hill using his signature. Remember, I explained earlier, Jimmy, that these marks, these quarry marks, there are the orientations of them on the walls of these chambers are, some of them are sideways, some of them are upside down, few of them are the right way up. So Mr. Hill needed to find a way to tell the people back in London how each group of these marks were oriented. You know, if you give a person standing in the chamber looking at these marks, if they're upside down, Mr. Hill wanted to make sure that the people in London knew which way around these particular set of marks were oriented. Okay, so he used his signature as a sort of like a compass.
Right.
A this way up sign, which when you're reading his signature the correct way, it would orientate the marks to the way they appeared in the chamber. Okay?
Well, we have to take a break right here. So let's do that, and we'll pick this up right when we come back. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton, his book, The Great Pyramid Hoax. I'm your host. I almost said I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
You've probably heard about all the great benefits of goat milk soap, but did you know some companies take shortcuts? At Old New England Soap, we make our organic goat's milk soap using 36% goat's milk. That's 17% more than most others. Our bars are larger, so they last longer, producing lots of lather packed with vitamins. And our soap is a natural moisturizer that smooths dry and damaged skin. Order online at oldnesoap.com. That's oldnesoap.com. You've tried the rest. Now try the best. oldnesoap.com.
Water-based soaps on supermarket shelves use harsh chemical acids to break down dead skin cells. And that's just not good for you. At Old New England Soap, our soaps are made without chemical ingredients, contain no alcohol or petroleum products, and use 85% organic materials and carry the USDA's organic certification. Try some today. Go to oldnesoap.com. That's oldnesoap.com. oldnesoap.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on the smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have sciatica, then you know all about the crippling pain that travels from your lower back down your leg when a spasm occurs. It's brutal. In fact, it's enough to take your breath away. Dr. Zhang's Sciatica Nerve Cream helps relieve persistent, shooting pains associated with the sciatic nerve in the lower back and legs. This natural, homeopathic cream contains the most potent ingredients to soothe even the most excruciating pain associated with sciatica. Stop the pain now. Ask for Dr. Zhang's Sciatica Nerve Cream at your local health food store or go online to trasknutrition.com.
Would you like relief from muscle pain, headaches, and discomfort to sleep better, have more energy during the day, and just feel naturally amazing? Fibromalic can help. Its blend of malic acid and magnesium can provide pain relief and comfort for those who experience fibromyalgia. It helps your body absorb more oxygen, and it works quickly for a significant reduction in pain within 48 hours, all without a prescription. Ask for Fibromalic at health and vitamin shops or shop fibromalic.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter right now. Twitter is hot right now, at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag F2BQ for any questions or comments for myself or Scott. And this portion of Fade to Black is brought to you by our sponsor, River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Yeah, that's right. It's Doc, complex, and smoky. Just go to River Moon Coffee right now. The banner is over at jimmychurchradio.com. Use the promo code F2BBlend, and you will get 15% off of your order. All right, so Scott, this is, okay, we've got a lot of, I want to take some phone calls here tonight too as well, so we'll set that up at the top of the hour. But we've got a few important points that I want to go through here. And the first thing I want to say is this. When I watched the famous video of Zahi, climbing up into Davidson's chamber, and he points down, with the camera, that right there is proof that this was Khufu's tomb. And I look, and I was just like, wait a minute. You're writing everything, all of history on that, right? That just doesn't look right to me. I need some papyrus. I need some carvings. I need some description, but to rest everything, all of world history on that doesn't look real to me is a stretch. And as it turns out, he's wrong. Now, there was some testing done on the gang symbols, and there was one point that almost got by me in your book. And you said that there were also some samples of iron that were found on the surface of the. How is that possible that there could be iron there when it's 2,000 years before the Iron Age? Right, we're dealing with copper here. Can you explain that to me and how iron was detected on the surface of these blocks?
Well, this is part of the research of the two German university graduates, Dominik Gorlitz and Stefan Erdmann. I think it was April 2013, they were they had a permit to visit these chambers, and they took a sample of the paint from one of the chambers, and I have to say it wasn't the cartouche. There was a total media circus about this event happening in 2013, claiming all sorts of hyper that they stole the cartouche. It wasn't. They took a small sample of ochre paint from a corner of the chamber of a much less significant sign. Anyway, they wanted to get that carbon dated. But part of their other research was that there's these curious marks on the ceiling, the roof of the king's chamber. They're small sort of rectangular shaped marks on the roof of the chamber at regular intervals, and these marks, they go behind the wall of the chamber. They go deep into the gap, where the wall meets the ceiling. So they're original, whatever these markings are, to the construction of the chamber. And Dominic Gorlitz, he took a scraping of these marks, of the material, whatever it was, and he found it was basically iron or some magnetite, and he has come to the conclusion that the ancient Egyptians, or whoever built these structures, used iron inside the Great Pyramid, because that is what his chemical analysis has come up with of this material that was removed from the roof or the ceiling of the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. It's been analysed.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Cairo didn't want to have found. Right, and through that controversy, which that's for a whole nother show, but they were crying. They wanted the samples back, if I remember correctly, that they stole part of it, and they did, And was it because the hoax was out that and they were finding things that weren't supposed to be? Iron obviously is a game changer. Right? And if the ochre paint isn't what it was supposed to be, and it was in the wrong spot and had other issues with it, well, then that strikes down everything. And is that why that they were crying foul with the Germans at that time?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of politics involved in this, Jimmy, as you probably know. That analysis made by Dominic Gorlitz, that is a major game changer in its own right, that he has found these markings contain iron. There's also, if you remember, there was an iron door found at the exit of the shaft from the King's Chamber. There's these small channels which go through the body of the pyramid from the chamber to the outside of the pyramid, and Vyse and his team found the exit of this small channel, and it was sealed by an iron door. So it's like, and it was, well, according to Vyse and Hill, I can't see any reason why they would particularly want to fake something like that. It was embedded into the stonework, so it's obviously original. They had to blast it out of the stonework. So they found this iron door, blocking this shaft. So whoever built this structure were using iron. So there we have it. It's just a mystery. Well, to me, it's not really a mystery, because I take a completely different view of these structures with a completely different chronology and timeline from conventional wisdom. I believe the structures are way, way, way much older than we are presently being led to believe by, conventional wisdom. So this, there's all these anomalies. The paint that they took, they wanted to have that carbon dated, because in ancient Egypt, what they would do, you cannot, I mean, ochre paint is made from iron oxide and water, that's all it is, but sometimes what they would do is they would put in gum or oil, fish oil or honey or whatever to act as a binding agent. Now, obviously, these are organic materials which you can then carbon date. That was the hope when they took this small sample of ochre paint from the sign.
Right.
But when they got it back to the lab and had it analysed, there wasn't enough organic material in the ochre paint, so it couldn't be tested. There just wasn't enough carbon datable material in the sample that they took. But in saying that, there's these unintended consequences. Their analysis found something else much more important that actually does prove that these marks were faked.
And what is that?
Well,
the
sample.
Yeah, go ahead, continue. I've got something else I've got to get in here. Go ahead.
Yeah, the sample that they took, Jimmy, we were talking earlier about this plaster on the walls that they would slide through, the blocks through. How come, these marks aren't smeared with this plaster? Well, it's always been argued by orthodox Egyptology that there's no plaster on the walls. It's white Tura limestone. Well, how would you know plaster on a white block? If the plaster's white, Anyway, they tested the rock that the paint had been painted onto, and it came back as calcium sulfate as opposed to calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is limestone, calcium sulfate is plaster. These signs have been painted onto plaster. So that means now you don't put plaster on the block until the block is in situ, until the block, is in place. If you're moving this block, 20 miles or 100 or 500 miles, whatever, you're not going to put plaster on. You're going to do, the plaster's a finishing job, yeah?
Yeah.
So the plaster's done in situ. So that means these signs then were done in situ, because you wait till the plaster's dry and then you put you paint the sign on the dried plaster. So why did the scribe paint the signs upside down?
The point that I think is most dramatic here is we are dealing with allegedly the fourth dynasty. And if we remove Khufu and the fourth dynasty, because we don't know anything about the Great Pyramid, we know nothing. The only thing we have are these hoaxed gang symbols in the Khufu cartouche. But if those are removed from the mix and it is no longer fourth dynasty, then we are back to ground zero. We're back to knowing absolutely nothing about the Great Pyramid. And if that is the case, and we take fourth dynasty out of the mix, and fourth dynasty is old. I mean, we're talking old. And if we take the fourth dynasty out of the mix, that means the pyramids were sitting there at dynasty zero, right? They were already there. And it truly rewrites history. We don't know about the age. We're going to talk about that in a second. But that's what is happening here, isn't it, Scott? We now know nothing. And the pyramids were clearly sitting there already during the fourth dynasty.
Yeah. These marks, Jimmy, are so crucial to the Orthodox narrative. These marks represent their holy grail of evidence that this structure was built by Khufu as his tomb. And ergo, its date, because they know when Khufu lived, is 2550 BC. Their whole timeline, their whole chronology hinges on these marks. Now, if these marks are shown to be fake and we remove them from evidence, then, as you say, we wipe the slate clean. We're back to hearsay of where we were nearly 200 years ago. That's where we have to go back to continue the conversation from where Vyse's actions effectively derailed the study of these structures. It took it down a cul-de-sac for the best part of 200 years, and we have to come back out of that cul-de-sac and look at the question afresh.
will you do me a favor right now? Say Holy Grail for me one more time.
Holy Grail.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I mean, no disrespect, but man, your accent is just, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Somebody else
Jimmy,
just tweeted.
Jimmy, say to me, I'm your hoax.
Yeah, right. See, somebody just tweeted, he's got to say Rolling Hills of Scotland for us, please.
The Rolling Hills of Scotland.
That's what I'm talking about. It is an absolute game changer, because if that is indeed the case, and you're absolutely right, everything rests on these hoaxed symbols. So if we take that out of the mix, that means Fourth Dynasty isn't there. We're back to ground zero, and we don't know nothing. And it's a crucial point to make, and nobody wants to step up and admit this. They're so ingrained in this, a 200-year-old hoax, that they can't go backwards. They simply can't, can they?
No. As I said, this, there's so many books that would have to be rewritten. There's so many reputations that would be on the line. They've all bought into this narrative. But as I said, Jimmy, I do believe that they know that these marks are fake. They're just not saying it. They're just not telling us. But I do genuinely believe that the authorities, the powers that be in Egypt, know. They have to know, because there's such glaringly obvious signs which should show them that these marks aren't right for this period. There's anachronistic signs in there. They're written with the wrong orientation. They didn't do horizontal writing in the Fourth Dynasty. It was vertical writing. So there's all this glaringly obvious stuff that they must know.
Right.
It's just wrong.
Right. And now let's get to one of the most important parts of the book. And the whole book is important, by the way. But that's that one line in Vyse's journal where he literally says, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm going to have you talk about it, but he literally says, okay, guys, get up into the chamber and start painting, right? And, I mean, what went through your mind, Scott, when you read that?
Well, when I read it initially, Jimmy, I was trying to figure out what's he actually talking about here. He draws this. Well, I'll let the the listeners hear this. He writes, for Raven and Hill. This is like he's writing. He's making a note to himself. He's going back to his journal at the end of a day. He's going back to his tent, to his desk with the oil lamp on his desk and his journal at night, writing of the day's events. So he's writing a note for himself. For Raven and Hill. These are the marks, and then he draws a picture of the marks, a cartouche, to inscribe on any plain low trussing. Now, trussing is a diagonal or a triangular support, roof trussing, and that's exactly the type of roof that we have in Campbell's chamber, where we find this particular cartouche. So he draws this cartouche in his diary, and he says, for Hill and Raven, basically this is the cartouche that I would like to be placed on a plain low trussing.
And it can't be any more clear. Why didn't he burn this journal? Why didn't he throw it in the fireplace? I mean, it's so clear and so obvious. Did he not care about the future? Did he not care about getting discovered? He was so meticulous about everything else, but this was a glaring mistake.
Well, have you ever burned any of your diaries?
Oh, yeah. I have none.
Scott. Well, I keep my diaries, they're personal. There's a lot of stuff in there that has a lot of personal value to me. So I think, he would be attached to these pages because they're, represent a special time in his life. when he was doing this stuff at Giza. Plus, we have to remember as well, this was 1837. Vyse is thinking no one else is ever going to look at these pages, over and above which his writing's extremely difficult anyway. But, this is 1837. You have to... He had no idea of electricity, of cameras,
carbon dating. Different
world.
Right.
And over and above which, maybe he was planning on burning this particular page or diary or whatever, but he died the day before he did it. We just don't know. But whatever reason is, fortunately, those pages are still here, and anyone can go and look at them for themselves.
And once you start to, you read that passage, right, where he literally instructs Raven and Hill to go willy-nilly, right, just go and get the painting done. But when you look at that, and then you look at all of the other evidence in the book in its totality, he was guilty from the word go. It wasn't one little thing. You start to add it up, and then you read that one thing, and it's just like, dude hoaxed us.
Yeah, and there's the eyewitness account as well. There's a guy that that saw it happening, and that story has come down to us as well. And that was one of the things that Zechariah published. I think it was 2007. That was one of the major pieces of evidence that Zechariah brought forward, and that was just poo-pooed and discounted out of hand because of some of the mistakes that Zechariah had made with some of his other evidence. But it's like the establishment, the academics, they throw everything out. Or you make one mistake, they throw everything out. I will just dismiss you entirely. No, that's wrong. Zechariah brought forward some really good stuff, some really good evidence. But because of a couple of things that he got wrong, and no one is denying that, everyone just, or the academics just throw the whole lot out, and that to me is just wrong. So there was these eyewitnesses, this eyewitness that saw Raven and Hill do this, and he had an argument with him, and they had a fight with Vyse about this, so that's all documented as well. It's just incredible that, to me now, Jimmy, looking at all this, and probably to you as well, reading this book and all the evidence and all the things that these guys actually got wrong and making this hoax, that anybody could actually believe that these marks today are genuine. It's just incredible that anyone could now believe that these marks are genuine.
Now, we're going to head to a break here. When we come back, we're going to open up the phone lines. But one of the crucial questions I have here, is probably going to come up in the phone calls too as well, is if it wasn't the Egyptians, it wasn't the 4th dynasty, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, dynasty 0, who built the pyramids?
Are you asking me this right now? Yeah, we could be here all night, Jimmy.
And we will discuss this. Well, absolutely.
My own view is I have to go with the evidence on this, okay? That's what I've done in this book, and that's what I always do. I talk about this in my previous book, Jimmy, The Secret Chamber of Osiris, The Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. Mm-hmm. And in that book, we're told by the ancient Egyptians themselves that their civilization is 40,000 years old. Right. Now, that's ignored. That's ignored by orthodox Egyptology. But I looked at that and thought, well, okay, let's run with it. Let's see where this takes us. And it makes a lot of sense, and it explains, that there once was a very ancient Egyptian civilization, the progenitor civilization of Egypt, if we could call it that, in my opinion, created these monuments. And they were doing so for a very specific reason, that they were anticipating the end of their kingdom. And this is what these pyramids were all about, to preserve the remnant of their civilization so that it could rise like a phoenix out of the ashes and rebuild itself. It could be reborn. So I explain all that in my previous book. So we're talking about, a civilization that goes back not 4,000 years or 5,000 years, but 40,000 years. It's been lost in the mists of time. And, we're just, we've been derailed, as I said, for the last 200 years by these quarry marks locking the pyramid date to Khufu, ergo to 4,500 years ago. We remove that, we can get back to where the discussion was almost 200 years ago and take it up from that point. Because there were people back then, 200 years ago, contemplating that the pyramids, well, they could have been built before the flood. They're talking about the biblical flood.
Right.
There was this discussion, there were antediluvian, structures and so forth. So that ended. These quarry marks discovered, allegedly by Vyse, ended that discussion, and, that was it.
Well, I'll tell you something else, Scott, and this is the truth. This is a fact. If it was Pharaoh Creighton, right, and that was your pyramid, you are not painting something up, where nobody can see it. You're going to put Creighton in big engraved letters over the entrance, and you're going to make it 50 yards wide, 50 cubits wide, 20 cubits tall, and you're going to put your name on it for everybody to know. You're not going to paint it up in the attic on the side of a truss. That's not how it's going to happen, and that's it. I'm just calling it how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, these quarry marks, they're unofficial. They're the quarry gang's stamps, if you like. They're not supposed to be there as such, okay? There are no official inscriptions anywhere inside the Great Pyramid, anywhere inside these early giant pyramids at all, anywhere. None. They're completely anonymous. And these are the only writing that has ever been found or identified as Egyptian writing that's ever been found anywhere in these pyramids. So if Khufu was some egomaniac, as some people suggest, building this massive tomb to himself, well, why didn't he put his name, in letters, 20 feet tall all over that structure? That's what an egomaniac. Why aren't there, statues of Khufu, lined up in the Grand Gallery or painted on the walls all over, those chambers in the Great Pyramid, 20 feet tall statues or paintings of Khufu? There's nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
nothing.
They did it all over Egypt, right? Any other temple in Egypt, what's going on there everywhere except for on the Giza Plateau, which includes the Sphinx. All right, let's take a break right here, Scott. If you're on hold, we'll take your calls next. You stay right there, 323-825-5045. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton, his book, The Great Pyramid Hoax. I'll be right back.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies.
I had gout in both my knees, and it's gone.
Well, I'm pretty stupid. I should have ordered it 15 years ago. Best thing I ever got in my... It's the most effective product that I've ever bought in my life.
He had eczema on his hand, and it cracked for years. He did anything from doctor, every cream, everything. And 3 months on the veggies and fruit, it was gone.
They're just awesome. They keep asking me, what am I doing? I told them what I did with my cholesterol. I had the blood test, right? And it went down 100 points. 262, now it's 162. Everything is just perfect.
Call now to find out how to get your free month's supply of Balance of Nature. Call 800-2468-751. That's 800-2468-751. Call now, 800-2468-751. Or go online to balanceofnature.com.
Use promo code TSL.
Would odors, mold, and mildew describe your basement or crawl space? It doesn't have to be that way. Transform them into a fresh, healthy, usable one with the technologically advanced Wave moisture control units. The computerized operation maximizes moisture control and also expels harmful radon, combustion gases, and numerous other pollutants. Dehumidifiers are old technology that do nothing for air quality and waste energy. Wave units are intelligent, self-monitoring, do not need maintenance, and will save you hundreds in electricity. Wave units are still running effectively over 15 years. They've been tested and installed in public and military housing and by property managers nationwide. Buy a unit now, and if your home is not fresher and drier, you can return it for a full refund for up to 12 months. What have you got to lose? Call now. 1-888-618-WAVE. 1-888-618-WAVE. Or visit mydryhome.com. That's mydryhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
Here's Tom, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Wow, what a show tonight. I knew it was going to be like this, by the way. Scott Creighton. The book, The Great Pyramid Hoax. And I do believe this will be a reference book for college campuses for years to come. I'm telling you, Scott, you've knocked one out of the park. You have a lot to be proud of here. But you are also rolling a rock uphill. How are you dealing with the criticism right now?
Yeah, there's going to be criticism. The book's fairly new, obviously, Jimmy. It's only been out since mid-December, so it's still fairly new. And I think the proverbial has yet to hit the fan.
Right.
And so I'm pretty sure, though, when it does, that, I'll get a fair bit of flack. But, all I can say to any of my critics is, well, there's the evidence. Go check it out yourself. If you can come up with a better idea, a better interpretation than I have of this evidence, then by all means do so.
Yeah, send them to me. Just send them to me. Just forward all of the email to me. What I do find interesting is that when you write something like this and you know the critics are going to come at you, that you can't have mistakes. And that's why this book is going to stand on its own. I found myself, Scott, I'm sitting in bed reading, with the light on and my wife next to me. And you can ask Rita, every 15 minutes, I was like, holy crap, you've got to be kidding me. Holy crap. And I will put the book down and think to myself how heavy and what the implications are. And that's what this book does. And I'm serious. You have a lot to be proud of. But also, you have to brace yourself because they're going to come at you. You are going straight after the academia
that has been strident on this dogma for forever. And that's you're laser pointed, focused on them, and they're going to fight this. They're not going to take it lying down. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Scott Creighton. You're live. 3, 2, 1. See, it's funny. You leave somebody on hold for too long, and they're off getting coffee, going to the bathroom.
Falling off the couch.
Yeah, they're going to hear the time delay, right? It's going to be playing. Oh, they're going to race to the phones. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. We need to talk about the Sphinx. Okay, well, no, let's deal with that. And what do you think the aging is of the Sphinx? And, of course, the recarving of the head. Now, whose face is that?
Well, yeah, there's all sorts of controversies surrounding the Sphinx, whether the head was originally, obviously the body is that of a lion, but whether the head originally itself was also that of a lion, because obviously the head is, relatively smaller than it should be for the body. So it begs the question, well, was the head originally much larger, as a lion's head, and has it been made smaller by subsequent, recarving of the head over time? So yeah, there's questions there. Personally, I think the Sphinx is contemporary with the pyramids. I think it's all part of a single unified plan. I explain why that is. In fact, if your listeners are listening, they can go onto YouTube. I explain how this plan all works together. Basically, Giza, part of the purpose of Giza is to represent our star clock. It basically tells us, when the design was created, when the pyramids were built. It dates the structures there. Go onto YouTube and just type in Giza star clock. 3 words, Giza star clock. And you'll find a small video there. It's about 2 minutes long. It explains how, this the structures at Giza, which includes the Sphinx, all works as a perfect star clock, and it points to the date of 20,000 years ago.
And the Sphinx included. So, are you dating the Sphinx? Shock was. And John Anthony West, and Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval have all talked about this 10,500 BC number. But are you suggesting that the Sphinx and goes back another 10,000 years?
Yep, absolutely, and there's no doubt in my mind about that. And various reasons for saying that, which, as I said, we could be talking all night about this, but it's explained in the previous book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris. But yeah, those structures at Giza are 20,000 years old, and I'm absolutely convinced about that. Because remember, the Egyptians tell us themselves that their civilization was 40,000 years old.
Right.
So this is like the midpoint of the very ancient Egyptian civilization, which obviously went into a period of decline because of, I believe, because of some natural disaster which occurred about 20,000 years ago. Which also, this same event brought about the end of the last glacial maximum. The ice sheets over North America and Europe went into meltdown. We still don't know the exact trigger. We think we've got some ideas about it, but we're not absolutely sure why those ice sheets went into meltdown 20,000 years ago. And to me, this whole thing is all tied together as one story, one cause and effect from what happened 20,000 years ago with the ice sheets. This civilization that existed then realized there was something wrong with the earth, because this is the Arabic chronicles tell us this. They record the story of King Saurid of ancient Egypt, who saw the skies, the stars and the moon and the sun, they had moved from their normal course across the sky. And he asked his priests, what does this mean? And his astronomer priest told him, it means in 300 years there will be a great flood which will destroy the entire kingdom. And King Saurid of this very ancient Egyptian civilization said, well, we are going to build giant pyramids, and inside these pyramids we are going to place everything our civilization will need to reconstitute itself after this flood has passed. And, you know, when you look at the evidence, Jimmy, you go to the very first pyramid, that giant pyramid that the ancient Egyptians built, the step pyramid at Saqqara.
Right.
The early 20th century explorer Cyril Firth was down in the passageways below the step pyramid at Saqqara. They're kilometres long. You know, they're absolutely enormous. And he was walking through these passages, you know, almost up to his knees in grain.
Interesting.
You know, walking through passages of grain. He found 40,000 vessels underneath that pyramid, you know, for grain storage and also, not just grain, but all sorts of other seed types as well.
Right.
You know, so this is what they were doing. You know, they were preparing for a natural disaster, and this is, you know, what the evidence, the actual physical evidence points to.
I want to get to a couple of other points really quick. I want to be clear on the faked cartouche, Khufu, and the gang symbols. Were these written incorrectly from left to right or right to left, or were they depicted correctly?
Well, these marks, the cartouches, if you read them properly, they've been written. When I say properly, I mean the characters are the right way up. They've been written horizontally, and in the 4th dynasty, they weren't right. You know, this particular script wasn't written horizontal. It's called hieratic script. Hieratic script is essentially painted hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics were mainly, or we call them hieroglyphics. They're carved, monumental. They're carved into stonework, whereas hieratic is a painted or written form of hieroglyphics. Okay, so this hieratic script is a shorthand for hieroglyphics. They would write them, you know, on paper using ink or whatever, or papyrus, sorry. But they would, in the 4th dynasty, they would write them vertically. The text would be written vertically. But all these quarry marks in these chambers were all written horizontally, and they didn't start writing horizontally hieratic script until much later dynasties, till about the 11th dynasty, they started writing horizontal hieratic script. So why do we find 11th dynasty script in a 4th dynasty structure? You know, this is what I said earlier in the show, Jimmy. That is so glaringly obvious. Mm-hmm. You know, that the powers that be must know that. They simply must know that.
Now,
you know,
and also, I want to be clear on this. That style of writing evolved over 1,000 years, and it got sloppier and you know, sloppier's not the right word, but it wasn't the beautiful stuff that was done in the 4th dynasty, and it turned into sloppiness. Well, that sloppiness is represented here, supposed to have been done during the 4th dynasty, which was an impossibility. That style of writing evolved over 1,000 years.
Well, that's right. Hieratic script basically started off as just painted versions of the hieroglyphics, the actual hieroglyphics. The hieroglyphic, sculpted hieroglyphics didn't change over the entire 3,500 year history of ancient Egypt. It didn't change. But the hieratic script, the shorthand of the hieroglyphics, right, that evolved over time. It became simplified in order to write it quicker. And over time, you can see the signs gradually changing, evolving into other signs, becoming ever more simplified. to make it quicker and quicker to write, and eventually becoming what's called demotic script, which is basically the script before it changes into what we call today Arabic script. So that is how, over 3,000 years, the hieroglyphics of the hieratic text evolved. And what we find also in these horizontally written hieratic cartouches or gang names is there are signs in those names which also come from they're much later evolved signs. These signs weren't actually used in the 4th dynasty. They were actually evolved much later. So what it looks to me has been happening, Jimmy, is that there was possibly some reconstruction project at Giza or repair project at Giza in some later dynasties, maybe the 12th or 13th dynasty, something like that. And it was the gang names from that time that Vyse, in his ignorance, copied into these chambers. He made a big mistake there. He is thinking, in his ignorance, he's totally ignorant. And in fact, most of Egyptology at that time was fairly, it was in its infancy at that time, our understanding of it. But we now know from having nearly 200 years of study, what happened when each of these signs evolved. Vyse wouldn't have known that. He thought it was all just the same. And he just copied it into these chambers.
Right. And why do you think, Scott, throughout all of your research, why suppress the truth? What is it that they are actually hiding here? They're hiding something, but why suppress the truth? Well, if the truth is just really simple, it wasn't Khufu, we don't know, but why hide the truth?
Well, I think probably one of the reasons is because nobody's challenged it, to be honest. Zechariah made an attempt at it, and obviously he got some things wrong there and was basically dismissed. But since then, that was almost 40 years ago, and nothing has been done since. So I think that's part of the reason, is because no one's really looked at it closely. Nobody's really challenged it. Well, this book is the first to do that. And I sincerely hope that Egyptology does look at this book and does consider what it's saying and does reassess, its position with regard to these particular marks. Now, I'm happy, Jimmy, to be shown that I'm wrong. I won't be wrong about everything. I may be wrong about a small detail here or there. I accept that. But there's a lot in that book that I am absolutely bang on the money about. And, it would be interesting to see how Egyptology approaches this, because it's never been done before. And this is the first book that has basically laid down the gauntlet to Egyptology to have a revisit of these marks, because it was too easy for them in the past. Nobody, and also the other thing as well to remember is that this had to be done by someone outside the discipline. This was never going to be done by someone within the academic Egyptology circles, because it's more than their job's worth. I said that earlier in the show. If they start rocking the boat, they could lose research grants. They might lose research permits. They won't be allowed to go to particular sites in Egypt. So there's a lot riding on people within the discipline just basically keeping stum about this stuff.
Tourism dollars. There's one example right there. Okay. The one of the most crucial things when it comes to Giza and the dating of all of this is I depend on my eyes. Right? I look at the pyramids, I look at the Sphinx, and I am sure that they haven't changed in 2,000 years. They have not changed. They look exactly the same, which probably means that they look the same 2,000 years before that. They haven't aged. They haven't changed at all, which means that they are really, 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 really bleeping old. And if that is the case, then probably what they're trying to suppress here or keep from us is the fact that civilization goes way beyond 3000 BC. It goes way beyond Mesopotamia. It goes way beyond Dynasty Zero. And they don't want that knowledge to get out here, because if it starts to leak out, then they have some explaining to do.
Yeah, absolutely. They do not want the conventional timeline challenged. That you're absolutely right in saying that. That's my view as well. And when you start, pulling, bricks out of the wall, as it were, that basically eventually destabilizes the entire edifice. They're basically trying to keep that wall up by suppressing and denying this information. So this book, it shows categorically that we've got to go back to basics with with these pyramids at Giza. We've just got to go back to basics here, because these marks can no longer lock these structures to 2550 BC. It can't, because those marks that did that are fake.
Right.
So we have to go back to basics. We have to get Egyptology to reassess this, to look at it with different eyes, using modern science, get modern science into these pyramids and start analysing these things properly, and stop being scared about changing the paradigm. We're all grown-ups here. If it turns out that the pyramids were built 10,000 years before Göbekli Tepe,
right?
It's like up until very recently, probably in the last 5-10 years, it was generally accepted that civilization began around 6,000 years ago. We began becoming we stopped being hunter-gatherers and started farming and so forth and so on. Well, what if that actually happened much earlier at Göbekli Tepe? There's a temple, with incredible artwork, which we apparently weren't supposed to be doing 12,000 years ago. But there you are. It's there. It's in your face. You can see it. So that proves that, we need to reassess this here. But what if that Göbekli Tepe is just scratching the surface?
That's exactly right. But that's exactly the point, though, Scott. That's exactly it. Göbekli Tepe wasn't supposed to exist, right? And it does. And now they have some explaining to do. I mean, that's a 7,000-year gap from the number that they gave us. They are saying the Great Pyramid is 2650 BC. That's their number, and that everything started right then. And then here we have Göbekli Tepe and 10,000 BC, right? 12,000 years old. It's not supposed to exist, and that is their problem, and they can't explain it.
Exactly. So when we start finding, it's almost like, Jimmy, the deeper we dig, the further we are pushing the boundaries of civilization.
Right. Well, let me ask you that. I ask every guest this question, so I'm going to ask it of you. I've done this now 600 times. You'll be 601. If you could jump into a time machine, I've answered this so many times. I'm going to Giza. I'm not going to the crucifixion. I'm not going to do any of that. No. I'm going to see how the Great Pyramid was built. If you could jump in that time machine, where would you go?
That's actually an easy one for me, Jimmy. I would go to, back in time, I would go to 48 BC. To the library at Alexandria.
Oh, good call, Scott. Good call.
And I would have as many buckets of water, ready to douse Caesar's ships before, because just think the knowledge, how the pyramids were built might have been in that library,
Yeah.
The amount of knowledge that we lost there is just it's unfathomable. How much knowledge.
You're the first person to say that. That's actually a good call. That's a very good call. And the other question I wanted to ask you was, you know what? Do you want to hang on for a little overtime? I've got to hit a break here, and I've got a couple other questions I want to get out there. Okay, is this? We have so many different theories because we don't know nothing, right? We just don't. About the Great Pyramid. What was it? A weapon? Was it a communications device? Was it a giant GPS? Was it a marking spot? So many different theories. It was an energy device. And for you, what was the function? The one thing it wasn't was a tomb, right? So we scratched that off the list. But what was the function of the Great Pyramid?
Well, obviously touched on that earlier, and I think the story of the Great Pyramid has kind of become corrupted in time, and its roots, its function has become lost in time and slightly corrupted. You'll be familiar with the granaries of Joseph idea, yeah?
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying the pyramids were the granaries of Joseph at all. I don't believe that. Like is it Ben Carson?
Yes.
Yeah, Ben Carson believes that. But I think there are elements of truth there that have become corrupted. I think genuinely the story of King Saurud of very ancient, long time ago in Egypt, his idea that they were going to build these structures essentially as arks, and they were going to store in them everything that the kingdom would need to be reborn again. That would include a lot of different seed types. There's probably, no pun intended here, a big, grain of truth in that story.
Well, what about, we've got 60 seconds. What do you think about the scanning pyramids project that's going on there right now? They have found some anomalies on different sides of the pyramid. How many chambers do you think are still left to be found? I think there's quite a bit, but what do you think?
Well, it's a difficult one. I think these may just be natural recesses, but they know about chambers under the Sphinx, and I've known about that for 20 years now, maybe more than that.
Right.
And they've never told us what's there. They've never told us. So even if they do find chambers, I'm not full of hope that they will ever release what's there, because this is the thing, Jimmy. They're scared to release information. This is why they haven't, the tomb of Tutankhamun. They believe Nefertiti's tomb may be behind one of the walls, and all that suddenly disappeared and been hushed up. So it's like they're almost scared to find stuff that contradicts their narrative. That's their problem. It's like they're almost afraid to find new evidence, because that new evidence might contradict their entire narrative. So it's always hushed up, and I think to a large extent it may also be done clandestinely, so that it doesn't leak out.
Right. We're going to take a break right here. Thank you, Scott. We're going to do a little overtime with everybody, and if you're on hold, I'll take your calls next too as well. So just stay right there. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton, live from Glasgow, Scotland. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. In a world of GMO, genetically modified organisms, that is, chemicals, processed foods, and a healthcare system that's unraveling like a cheap suit, it's time to prepare. God created herbs, and herbs help man. Our body can heal itself, just sometimes we need assistance. You need some help? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our mild detox is quite powerful with its unique blend of 8 different herbs. And if you're looking for more, our non-GMO supplements will help you with different needs you might have. Health should be a top priority. Take care of your health naturally. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Give your body a treat. Let the herbs do their thing naturally. Read all the testimonies on the website, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Sickness and viruses are like intruders, and herbs are like warriors. Let the tea work for you. That's GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fader-Knots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Scott Creighton. His book, The Great Pyramid Hoax. We've got Scott's going to do a little overtime with us. I've got enough time for a couple of quick phone calls, and I'm going to get all of your questions in right now to Scott directly that have been sent in, and so I will honor all of those. Scott, let's go to the phones really quick. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Scott. You're live.
Hello?
Yeah, you're live right now.
Yeah. Okay, this is Arnold from San Jose.
Hi, Arnold.
And my question to Scott is about the Sphinx. I was there with my wife about 11 years ago. We got a chance to see it in the enclosure with John Anthony West. And everybody says that it was originally a lion, but lions have tufts on their tail. And one thing I noticed, there was no tuft on the tail of the Sphinx. So that's one of the ways to tell lions from other large cats. Any response to that?
It's not a particular detail that I've paid that much attention to, Arnold. But you know, it's a perfectly valid point, a valid question. It's maybe has it been removed or recarved or most obviously people regard the Sphinx as a feline or cat animal, so and we have other sphinxes throughout Egypt, obviously other than the Great Sphinx, so and they're obviously regarded as lions,
yeah, that's Arnold, that's a great question, by the way, and I've got sphinxes all over the bunker, right, and over at the house, and I don't think there's any tufts on any of them.
That's curious. But Robert Temple brought it up in his book, The Mystery of the Sphinx, and suggesting that it could have been the head of a dog originally. But
yeah, I've heard that too.
It's definitely not Khafre's head.
Yeah, no,
when you look at it closely, you can see it's very, very old.
Yeah,
very old. All the erosion on it.
Yeah. Thank you for the phone call, Arnold. That's a great point. Thank you so much for that, my friend.
Thanks.
That's a really great point, and I've got them all. I've never looked for that. All right, a couple of questions. What does Scott know about the ancient metals that were originally on the tops of the pyramid?
The ancient metals. The only metal that they're talking about the apex or the Ben stone on the Great Pyramid. Well, there's been some theories about the Ben stone or the capstone was that it was made of gold, but again, that's just a theory. It's never really been proven. Metal, the only metal that I'm aware of that we actually know physically existed was the metal door that I spoke about, which was on the exterior of the southern shaft from the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. That has actually been, they reckon it's probably been meteoric iron. So that's the only metal that I'm aware of that has physically been identified.
Yeah, there's and I'm sure the reference here from Fran is the different theories of the capstones. Some were gems, some people suggest it was gold, and so forth. And I think that's what the reference was there. Check this out. What about the supposed papyrus, the diary of the pyramid builder during the Khufu period? What do you think about that?
I believe that's a diary of Merer, who was basically a scribe, basically noting down the number of blocks and so forth that was being sent to Akhet Khufu, which some people believe is the name of the Great Pyramid. Now, we know that this could have merely have been for a construction job or a reconstruction job, a repair job at Giza. It doesn't, Merer's diary doesn't say, if it's for the construction, the original construction, or a repair job, because we have the inventory stela, which basically tells us that Khufu made a lot of repairs to a number of monuments at Giza, including the Sphinx, by the way. So why would that's a curious one. Why would Khufu be repairing the Sphinx if it was supposedly his son that built the Sphinx? Why would he be repairing something? That suggests that if he's repairing it, it must have been old or ancient, even in Khufu's time. So there's these contradictory texts that we have. Merer's diary, it talks about blocks being cut from the Tura quarries and sent to Giza, but it could merely have been for this work that we know from the inventory stela that Khufu was repairing, these other monuments, repairing monuments as opposed to building monuments at Giza.
One of the things that I have tried to find, and through not only through books but through museums and things with my own eyes, I've just tried to see a pyramid in any hieroglyphs anywhere, right?
Yeah, it's a curious thing. We find that the ancient Egyptians, they tell us just about everything about their everyday life, what they had for breakfast, what beer they drank, when they had sex, they tell us everything about their life, but the one thing they don't tell us is anything about the pyramids. Or very, very little. We certainly don't know how they built them or anything like that. It's just completely blank.
You would think that it would be there. Now, okay, this question comes in from IPD, and his question is, what will happen first? Disclosure about the pyramids or disclosure about UFOs? What do you think is going to happen first?
Probably neither.
Yeah. Too easy of a question to answer. I knew you were going to go there. Now, since the book was published, and you have to go through editing, and you write the book, and you finish it, and that's a long process. But since you've completed the book, have you been contacted from anybody else with any evidence? Have you found or uncovered any more evidence to support the hoax?
Yeah. Well, I've received emails from Egyptologists that say I'm right. So that's a good thing. Obviously, they want to remain anonymous, and I've got to respect that. But when you have a theory or a hypothesis, Jimmy, and you test that hypothesis over time, over time, if the hypothesis is correct, you generally find more and more supporting evidence popping up to support that hypothesis. If it's wrong, you generally don't find very much popping up to support that hypothesis. Now, as you know, there's an absolute ton of evidence in the book already supporting the hypothesis of this hoax. But since the book was locked down and I could make no more changes to it, I've actually gone on and discovered even further evidence which isn't in the book. So it's an ongoing process, really, of discovering more and more evidence. So I don't know if it'll be a sequel or maybe an update to the book. Probably a sequel, if I find more and more or enough evidence to put together a complete book.
What's next?
What's next? Well, next I would hope that Egyptology takes this book, reads it and takes it seriously and considers its role in all of this and its responsibility in all of this. They are the guardians of our past, of our history, and we are beholden to them to make sure that they give us the facts and give us the truth. If they, as scientists, are not doing that, then they really should, be considering careers in something else. So Egyptology needs to take this question seriously. They need to look at the evidence presented and address it and get to the truth of this, because this is all our history. Yeah, this is all our history at stake here. And the truth of our past is at stake here. Who we are as a civilization, where we come from, and to some extent where we're going. So we need Egyptologists to take this matter seriously and to be open and transparent about any information, or if they're going to go and do their own tests in these chambers, which I think have already been done, but if they decide to do that, then it needs to be done in an open and transparent way, so that we, as the public, can see that it's being done in an open and transparent way, because at the end of the day, this is a matter of trust as well.
Do you think that they will respond to this and go, okay, let's open up the upper chambers, let's go and get some carbon dating done, let's do some chemical analysis, let's take some high-res photographs and electron microscopes, and let's prove this. Let's prove Scott wrong, right? Do you think that they will actually do that? I mean, because if they don't, the silence, then that means that you are right, and that's the way that I look at it. Do you think that they'll accept the challenge?
Well, I've lain down the gauntlet. I hope to pick it up, because at the end of the day, I want the truth. That's all I want. That's all I'm interested in.
Right.
I believe I have uncovered a truth here, and that truth is that those marks are fake. And I think I have good, strong evidence from all different sources, including eyewitnesses, chemical analysis, brushstroke analysis. We look at the evolution of the signs that some of them are anachronistic. So there's a ton of evidence in that book which says I'm right. If I've got something wrong, I'll put my hands up and say, well, fine, fair enough. But they have to prove the entire book wrong, not just one or two little things in it. So that's the challenge that they've got. And if they can prove me right, if they can prove me wrong, and show me why I'm wrong and show me how I'm wrong, then fine, I'll accept that. I'll put my hands up and say, fine, fair enough. But until they do that, then, that gauntlet is there.
Well, they're going to have a hard time saying that Vyse lied in his own journal then, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. The guy is a known... the guy actually committed fraud earlier in his life, and that's provable that the guy committed fraud in another aspect of his life. And that's the evidence for that is there, and it's in black and white. There's no refuting that. It cannot be denied. So this is the kind of guy we're dealing with here. I'm not saying that, a leopard, doesn't change its spots, and, it's
possible. It's possible. Right.
It's possible.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for getting up so early in the morning over there in Scotland and hanging out with us. It was just a tremendous show. It was everything that I expected and more. But please keep fighting the good fight. I look forward to your next book, and I look forward to your next appearance on Fade to Black. We're going to talk Osiris next time around, okay?
It's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the show tonight, Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Scott. And again, behave.
No.
Scott Creighton, everybody. Just go to innertraditions.com and you can order the book straight from there. Scott Creighton, the book is The Great Pyramid Hoax. And I got to tell you, it's been on my nightstand now for 2 months, and I've read through it again. It is a future reference book for everybody. Go and get the book now, The Great Pyramid Hoax by Scott Creighton. All right, before I let you go, and I want to thank Scott again for not only getting up early in the morning, but going into overtime with us over here. But there's a couple of things I got to get out of the way before we head to the end of the show. And the first thing, it happened this morning, hundreds of people around the upper Midwest, especially in Wisconsin and Illinois, reported witnessing a fireball event, and it happened at around 1:30 a.m. Central Time, and the fireball was spotted by witnesses as far west as Wisconsin and as far east as New York. Now, before you go hunting, oh no, my computer's just crashed. Oh man, my computer's just crashed straight in front of me. So there you go. All right. So no phone calls. All of that just went away. You got to love live radio. I'm looking at blank screens in front of me straight across the board. So, with that, I can't do anything. My hands are tied. The only thing that I have left over here to my right is the exit music. I don't have anything in front of me. Oh, man. What a drag. All right, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. Okay, you know what? If I disappear out of here early, that means the network is not going to know what to do either. All right, let me do this. I'm going to do this in real time. Okay, let me just say this. I do actually want to do a wrap up on Scott. The point that I have made over and over again on this show is that when we look at the history of Egypt and we look at that magic number of 2650 BC and what allegedly was going on there, the rest of the world, and I am talking about Northern Europe, the UK, the Americas, everybody at that point at 3000 BC is wrestling out of the Stone Age. The Stone Age. Everybody was foraging for seeds in the ground. There was some semblance of things happening. But at that point, Mesopotamia hadn't happened. Ancient Sumer hadn't happened. If you go by the history books. Right? And so suddenly on Giza, on the plateau, Stone Age man just blossomed overnight and was able to walk into Giza, go up, take a limestone hill, and flatten it, make perfectly flat, align to magnetic north, And they were able to do this and bring in and quarry these blocks and level the blocks off and make them perfect and build a foundation for the Great Pyramid that wouldn't sink into the ground. It would be perfect. 4,000 or 5,000 years later, allegedly, this doesn't shift. It doesn't move. The King's Chamber is as perfect today as it was whenever ago. And that's the big mystery here. They want us to accept this type of thought when it was indeed absolutely impossible. There's just no way for this to happen. Now, that's point number one. That Stone Age man was able to go in square limestone hill, lop it off, level it off, quarry these rocks, lay the foundation stones into place. And that was all before the pyramid was built. Without any math, without any high technology, without any equipment, that they were able to do this. And that was the start of it all. I need to drive this home, right? Everybody else is running around in animal skins, but yet the Egyptians were able to do this without any education, nobody teaching them. They just did this overnight, and we are forced to accept this fact. And then, on top of that, we are forced to accept the fact that they built a 40-story high structure out of 2.5 million blocks of stone that remained the tallest structure in the world until the Eiffel Tower. Stone Age man. I just don't buy into any of it. They had to have had some help. And that's if we accept their version of the story. They were able to not only if you accept that, to the lower chamber, not the Queen's Chamber, the lower chamber, a 300-foot tunnel, perfectly square and perfectly straight, was dug through that bedrock without any tools, without any modern. To do that today, it would be nearly impossible. It would be nearly impossible. Who would want to do it, right? Perfectly straight, perfectly square, 3-foot square, perfectly dug, 300 feet down. But we're forced into accepting this fact. It just doesn't make any sense. And then they turn around and go in the opposite direction and build the Grand Gallery. Stone Age man, 3000 BC, 2650 BC. At 2650 BC, it is so old and so long ago. Right now, Rita and I talk about this every single day, and she's down the hall in her studio rolling her eyes because she knows what I'm about to say. But at 2650 BC, Rome is still 2,000 years away into the future. Rome. Greece is 2,000 years away. 2,000 years. But yet we are forced to accept that this is what was going on in Giza. And that's where we call BS. They had some help, if we accept their narrative. But I contend, and certainly listening to Scott, and after reading his excellent book, those pyramids were already there. They were not built at 2650 BC. The fourth dynasty, my friends, is removed. Khufu is removed. Menkaure, what everything else that Vyse had brought forward on the Giza Plateau is all null. It's a moot point. Those pyramids were already there. Now, who built them? Don't know. When we look at what's going on right now down in Antarctica, this is a very important point, and what has been discovered in Göbekli Tepe clearly suggest that there were civilizations that predated everything else. It did not happen in Mesopotamia, in Iraq at 3000 BC. It just plain and simply didn't. It didn't happen in Giza as they suggest. The pyramids were already there. I want to thank Scott Creighton today. And it is an amazing book. You can send email to Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at jchurchradio. I've got no computers here. Everything is black here in the studio. The only thing that's feeding right now is the network and to you. So I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. Thank you for the phone calls. Thank you for Twitter. Thank you to Scott. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. I have no notes in front of me. Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jonas. Fade to Black's theme music is Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Music by Doug Aldrich. I want to thank everybody that called in tonight. Thank you to Scott Creighton. Fade to Black is copywritten 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be used anywhere in the known universe. It cannot be written, copied, without anything from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here, Dave Schrader, Beyond Darkness. The Darkness Guy is right here. Tomorrow night on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.